Hello everyone, we are live and we are back to Virginia, believe it or not. So Tuesday we had a league night here. Today we are going to go for a few fast laps, see what we can do, and then discuss with the coach. So yeah, it's been a busy week. How are you guys doing? Is everything alright? Every little thing is gonna be alright. Let's say just remind a bunch of things that I have to do. Jeez. Let's go. I have to find a solution for my heel rest. I thought about something, I just have to do it. Oh, we actually have an active reset, so stay in. Like this corner is the one that we have to carry a lot of speed here and have like a decent exit. Let's see. And I think this car accepts more braking than the Porsche. Maybe earlier. So let's go early on the brakes. Not enough, wasn't enough. There's a bit of hesitation on my gas, which is not good.
New fastest lap for you.
Yeah, we know like it's not the best way to go around the corner, right? Uh-oh. Maybe a little bit more commitment to the gas there. So better to take it easy on the entry of the corner and then like go for it. Let's see
Just
again.
set your fastest lap of the session.
Not that, not that. I think we may have to bring the bias a little bit to the back. Let's see. No? No. I'm trying to find a brake bias on my dashboard. I don't see there. I'm turning in too early.
New fast flat for you.
It means like I'm over slowing down, you see? I think you can even brake later, so let's say the 3. Too late, right? Or maybe I turn in later. No, if I turn later it's too late. So let's bring it in a bit. I feel that's it. I just have to do like a better turning. Sector 1 was very good. Sector 2 sucked.
New fast flat for you.
Yeah, like you see, like this is not helping. I have to slow like further down. So let's go early and less. But it should be a little bit more than this. Yeah, I almost feel like it's there. So 60% of the 5. No, right? Even earlier. No, if it has to be like 40%, it's super early. Yeah, like actually all braking points are having the same issue. So let's go back to our original one in a harder braking. Almost. We're pushing a good lap there.
We've got big problems with that engine. I bet you lost a lot of power. Looks like one of your wheels is out of alignment. You'll have less grip out there.
That felt good. Bit more aggressive on the gas. Bit more aggressive.
Just set your fastest lap of the session.
I pushed too hard. I worked out, but I pushed too hard. Tried. So let's see this from behind, okay? Sometimes I find it helpful to see the car from the outside in a fast lap. Let's see. A lot of sliding of the car. I have to open up more here.
Louis said,
Hello, hello.
stopping by for a little bit. How's your week been so far?
Hello, sir. It's been okay. We had like a couple races on Monday. I think we net zero iRating. Tuesday was the league on this track, so I got a head start. And yesterday I didn't do anything. It's been busy. It's been crazy busy outside of here. But I'm glad to be back, and I'm trying to get like a good lap. I don't know what I think my coach's lap is 4-0. 4-0. So we're chasing the 4-0 here. We're at 4-6, which is not bad. How about yours?
Allison Racing said, hey man.
Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Trying to get a decent lap here to review the coach.
Said, yeah, it's been good so far. Got home on Monday night, went to bed early on Tuesday cause I was absolutely shattered, and watched some of Reacher S4 with my mum yesterday.
That sounds like a good week. No racing though. What do you mean, like there's life outside of racing? There he goes, there he goes.
You cut the course, you've got to slow down
That
and
was
give
such
up
a
that
good
time.
lap. I think I've seen there's a movie of the Reacher, right? Or am I going crazy? I think I've seen the movie. Okay, close.
Louis said, did a TCR race earlier, got P4 after second, crashed with a lapper.
Nice. Yeah, crashes are never good, but P4, I'll take it. I don't think I've been racing decently recently to be racing decently recently.
Louis said, yeah, Tom Cruise did a movie or two. We're
Yeah.
watching the Crime Show with Alan Rich's son.
Yeah, it's funny because like Tom Cruise is this short, smart-ass, skinny guy. No, I won't say skinny, right? But like The Prime Video one, like, the guy is a wall of muscle. Which, from what I've seen, like, it's closer to what... there's a book, right? Or, like, wherever the original story is.
Louis said,
Didn't like this one.
TVF Alan Richson makes almost everyone look small.
That is true. The guy's like a fridge. This is not gonna be a fast lap, or our fastest lap, but at least we'll get a lap in, so... I touched the grass. Me, on the other hand, I want to watch the new season of Ted Lasso. I haven't started yet, though. I was looking at the chat. No, garbage. Yeah, like that's too early the braking. Let's try it again. I did save the spin, but I lost a lot of time. Or like engaging the ABS like crazy, right? Saw about like that entry right there.
Rudy Turbo
Hey Rudy!
said, hey Alan, don't take T2 as a corner, set yourself right on the outside curve for max T3 entry width.
Okay. Hold on. Because now I have to remember which one is T2. Okay, open up. Let me try it. I'm coming into narrow, right? No. Wasn't good. That was like a faster lap, but it wasn't good. It wasn't good. So let's try the T2 opening up a bit more. Yeah, like that's the... I'm kind of struggling with them. Let's try again. Yeah, too far. Maybe a harder braking. Let's keep trying. Let me go around one lap here, but let's go spin. I think we're close. Just gotta find a new braking marker there.
Turbo said, no smooth and long braking cause you're turning through hole braking.
Smooth and long. Okay, so brake earlier and less. There's something in there. Let's keep trying to find where it is. Close, was close. No, okay. Uh-oh. Less than this, okay. Where do you go there? About here? Okay. 30% maybe. No, like, you gotta trust more the car. And I'm screwing up like the first turn as well. So let me just try like a full lap here. Without worrying too much about the delta. Yeah. I think that brake pressure is good. Yeah. Let's see one thing here. It's not a bad lap. It wasn't a bad lap. It wasn't our fastest, but we did have some good sectors. Too early on the brakes, maybe. Now you can also try to find like more the edges, how much you can cut off like each one of these corners, which sounds like a lot, right? No bueno. Sector 5 was good. Was like the how do they call it? Roller coaster? That felt good. A lot of hesitation there. Uh-oh. No slowdown? No. Okay, let's try to remove this thing here and just focus on 3 fast laps. Oops. Looks like I slowed down too much. I know I slowed down too much because I can cut the corner.
Slow down penalty.
So let's try 3 fast laps. There's one thing though. I want to get rid of this. Get rid of the delta on my thing here. Can I? I can't. Good. Race 1, race 2, I think that's it. So... we'll just... because I don't want to be... like, I don't want to keep seeing this, to be honest. So... where is this? Is F6? No, how do I change this? No. Here. Good. Now we have 0 dashboard information. And we can focus on not like peaking our delta. Took me a long time to go to 100%. No. No.
Rudy Turbo said. So right now your problem is oversteer on this entry, and you know how you had an understeer problem before, so you can use it to your advantage. Now try holding some throttle to stabilize rear on. Rudy Turbo said. Entry or steer a bit more.
Which corner? Because there's like there's a good gap when you see it. And when I see it. And I hear you, yeah. Too hard. Yeah.
Allison Racing said. There is a chance of rain in GT4 area. It will be interesting.
Oh, in the open setup or in both? I gotta be like more on this side of the corner.
Allison Racing said. Just unfixed.
Maybe it's time for me like to start racing more in the rain. Cause I suck. Like my rain iRating is like 200. No, it's still like slow down too much, you
cut
see?
that corner and got a slow down penalty.
Yeah, like this is a lot of oversteer. So I don't apply the brake bias because I like how the car is oversteering elsewhere.
Rudy Turbo said. Srey still T3 but also in general. Rudy Turbo said, my TV keeps buffering so I fall off pace a bit.
Yeah, there's a lag between when you see and you type and you hit enter, and when I see, it's probably like, and also I have to rely on the thing saying on my off track. Something that I think otherwise was a good lap, by the way. Okay, I screwed up here. But that was a very decent lap, in my opinion. I did make an adjustment on the brake bias, and I think the car is where it should be now. You see early. Still pointing in the right direction. Let's try one more. I think we have time for one more. All or nothing. Just lost a lot of time there, a lot of time. Wow, what a shame. Okay. Off track. One more. I think we can push one more before the last one. I killed my own lap. Let's put this now. Bring on the pressure. Nope. Almost. Last chance. Ooh, too late. Last chance. It's a garbage. But maybe we can still improve a bit. Ah, off track.
You cut the course, you've got to slow down and give up that time.
Alright, got the message here.
We've got big problems with that engine. I bet you lost a lot of power.
I bet it's you.
Looks like your car is toast. You'll need a tow back to pit lane. Press and hold the reset button and we'll come and get you.
I mean, we have decent things to talk about today.
Louis said, slightly suboptimal.
Good evening, Alan. How are you, brother?
Hello, sir. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Yes, good. Thank
Just
you, man.
slightly.
Good, thank you. Have a good week. Has it been busy? Not too bad.
Yeah, like I haven't raced a lot this week, to be honest. Yesterday I
Sure.
skipped it, so today I was here trying to get a decent lap.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
as we're getting close to the baby coming,
Yep.
the head
Yep,
starts
yep.
going to a different space. So I'm trying my best here.
Yes, correct. Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Absolutely. I mean, look, I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing that you want to be able to develop, and I guess as we are starting to develop, is feeling like you're a lot more efficient. And I think that's a very important thing, because I think in sim racing and just, obviously when you have a lifestyle outside of the sim, I think I always take it for granted, because, I wake up and go to sleep doing sim racing basically in a way. So it's, definitely something I have a lot of time to kind of put action into. But, I think even for me, it's not a case that I have so many laps to do through the week, and, obviously I have to be pretty efficient with it all, because if I'm not, I'm going to be sitting there for 20 hours every single week doing laps and doing all these different cars and tracks, which exactly isn't probably the most fun thing to do, but as well time-wise, it's probably not the most efficient either. So you want to kind of feel like within, an hour at least, in a car that you maybe, you're getting used to, and obviously a track that naturally we've done into a capacity, but not in this layout, I suppose. You want to be able to kind of quite efficiently get the lap time out of it pretty quickly, which it seems like is what's happening for you, which is great. And again, we are playing around with new cars quite a fair bit. It's not like we're just staying consistent to one, so you kind of are learning on the fly. But yeah, are you feeling like time is coming more efficiently for you? You don't have to kind of sit there and grind it out as much to get that result, or how do you feel with that?
I think like what you just said is very true. I think the more I'm developing myself, the less time it takes. Like even like new tracks, of course, if you're talking about Le Mans or like Norge or something crazy like that,
Yeah, of course.
it's gonna take a good amount of time. Tracks that I already know, or that I know a portion of the track, because like they race different layouts, it's much easier. So like on Tuesday we came here to race the league, and I have the Porsche in the league. And I sat down here maybe 3 minutes before the race. So I didn't have time to practice, find anything. I was like, okay, 2 races. The first race is going to be all about like finding my pace and understanding my braking markers. And the second race was a 15-minute race. The second was a half an hour. Like I'm going to race the second one. And like in 15 minutes, it was enough for me to find, I'd say like 95% of what I should do. And of course, like with more practice, I become more consistent. But like at least understanding what's safe to do, what's like not safe to do, it's been like faster and faster. And I remember like in the beginning, I would go to a track, even a track that I knew, and it would take me a good amount of time to be anywhere like close to the reference lap. And now like sometimes my first, second lap, still a few seconds away, but like nothing crazy. Like I'm slow, I go off track here, off track there, and I see like, okay, I lost like 3 seconds. So cool, like I have a few more laps to find these 3 seconds, and I've been able to find that.
Yeah, good. Yeah, no, that's a good thing to have in your pocket. Because yeah, I think for me, yeah, like I said to you before, my my weeks would be a lot more long if I wasn't as efficient with what I'm doing. And again, I think it's always the case of, look, if I sat there for longer and there was more time to find, then yeah, I probably could. But at the end of the day, it's more sort of thing of, if I'm not going to actually properly race that thing, to the absolute top capacity to be on pole every single race and win every single race, then there's not exactly something that I'll need to go and do. But if that's my idea, like for example, last week I did a fair bit of Le Mans for GT3s, and I probably could have put a good extra, 2 to 3 hours in that week of doing testing, practicing, for like the qualifying, because obviously the qualifying there was very unique with, doing your laps on a cold tire basically for half of it. So, just understanding how that kind of works and going and doing races and just experiencing it firsthand as well. I enjoyed that, but again, it's just a very unique week where I find it quite enjoyable. So I'll go and put my hand out and give it a go. But yeah, for every other circuit, it's just more sort of a case of, having the right structure, having the right approach, knowing how you got to do, what you got to do, why you're doing it. That's just what generally gives you the answer. Now, I think, yeah, this week, really is in the case, again, back in the Ford. I guess, how are you feeling between now trying a few different cars? I mean, obviously, we tried the Ford now, the BM, obviously the Cayman. Is there any that you're kind of leading anywhere towards to? I definitely can, I guess from my opinion, and I wonder if you feel the same as well, the Ford can be good, but it can be very kind of, in a way, sensitive, almost in a sense, like in a case of, it's very easy to make mistakes. It's very easy to miss braking zones. It's very easy to, have moments on power. It doesn't really react as well as something like the Cayman, for example, right? And I think it's just that weight of the car, just the front engine as well, just how the car reacts on power, how it rotates. So is that kind of something that you're feeling as well with the Ford? I guess obviously as well, driving the Cayman around here early in the week too.
Yeah, like I feel like as I'm driving them, as I'm understanding more each car, and you still have like
Yeah.
other cars to drive, but I think what will come up to at some point is I will know like which car I want to use for each track.
Yeah.
So the three cars I've tested, I feel like the Mustang is closer to the BMW than it is to the Cayman.
Yes.
So when it's a
Yes.
track that like it's not good for the BMW, it's likely not going to be good for the Mustang as well.
Yes.
So like that's more likely the Porsche type of track. And if I had like to
Yes.
pick today, like and I saw a track that felt more for the Porsche, I would take it. But I feel these tracks that you so like Virginia, there are other tracks in the calendar as well that have like these very long straights, very long straights.
Yes.
What I
Correct.
feel like, I feel the Porsche does well because it's very good in the corners,
Yes.
but the problem is you have to be 100% in every single corner exit, because if you're
Correct.
not,
Yes.
then you're defending on the next corner
Yeah.
where you should be faster,
Yeah.
and now you're
Yeah.
defending, and now like
Yeah.
they're just getting closer and closer, and it becomes like a tough race to race. But
Yes.
I'm feeling the difference. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to see like what they right now. Like I'm kind of understanding the differences between the BMW and the Mustang. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
the right way of saying it, but I feel like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
BMW is like a little bit heavier, and like that has that behavior that we learned of them too. The Mustang is
Yeah.
a little bit smoother in a sense, but it's also like it
Yeah.
feels lighter.
Yeah.
So sometimes you want
Yes.
to trust the car is gonna just like glue to the ground and do what you
Yeah.
want, and the Mustang's a little
Yeah.
bit light for that, and it starts like
Yeah.
slipping away from me. So like for
Yeah.
some tracks where the BMW is not quite the ideal car, the Mustang might be it. But yeah, I'm starting to really learn them.
Yep, yep. No, that's good. And yeah, I can definitely agree with those ideas there, those statements. I think, yeah, definitely the BMW does feel a little bit more weighty, I suppose. I probably think the biggest reason why as to that is to be honest with you, got a lot to do with just the gear ratio in that car. I think naturally just because you're using a higher gear in every single corner in the BMW in comparison to the Mustang, it really does make the kind of the car feel very lazy, I suppose, in a sense. Whereas obviously in this car, you're still using, your first gears, your second gears, all that kind of stuff. So to get it to rotate, you do the typical usual approaches of going down the gears, but whereas in the BM, realistically at a minimum, you're always basically using third gear. So it can be quite, it can be quite tough depending on the circuit, and that's why, yeah, um, it is very kind of track dependent, that car, because yeah, there's only select circuits where it'll be okay to use third gear through a lot of the corners, but then you go to, like we did earlier in the season, places like St. Petersburg, for example, and it's always going to be always going to be driving on very kind of slow corners, very sort of tight radius corners. So having a car where you can use those low gears is always going to be helpful. But again, like we said, the Mustang felt terrible almost in a way around there, because just again the platform didn't really suit the circuit at all. I mean, there wasn't really long straights for the car to actually get any benefit out of it. So why would you ever go for a car that is beneficial on the straights when you need to basically be quick in the corners? So yeah, it's quite interesting, I think, to look at it from that perspective. But yeah, no, look, I think, how's the racing been for you? Any big comments with the racing for you? Any kind of big moments that you were like, oh, okay, that's a learning experience for me? Or is it again just kind of getting your head used to how you feed yourself through the pack and how to work through all the different positions and stuff like that throughout a race?
Yeah, like I had after our lesson last week, I had
Yeah.
I think it was Friday or Saturday. I lost like
Okay.
250 rating in 2 races
Oh wow.
because
Okay.
I
Right.
crashed, and
Right. Yeah.
then like you're back like the end of the pack, and there was no like which track was it? Was it St. Petersburg?
We
I
had
think
what?
it was,
Yeah, we had St. Petersburg. Yeah, we
and
had
that's
St.
a tough
Petersburg
track to
last
crash.
6 p.m. Yeah.
So I think it was that.
Yeah.
But like I also feel that some of the races that I make mistakes and all of a sudden, or I don't have a good start, and I'm like in the middle of the pack, they're starting to
Yeah.
become more interesting, because as
Yeah.
I have more control of the car, and as I feel more confident, I'm starting to be more aggressive, and like
Yeah.
okay, I'm like P13 here, and I could be
Yeah.
like in terms of pace, I could be P5. That
Yeah.
means that I
Right.
have to get rid of 8 cars here, right?
Yeah.
And they're not gonna move away. They're not gonna just like
Yeah. Sure.
get off my way. So
Yes.
that brings my brain to, and also I think it was some pits, because I remember there was one race, there was complete carnage, like complete carnage, and all I was doing was trying to stay safe here and there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And oh no, it was like Tuesday, it was the league night. It
Right.
was here in Virginia, so people crashing everywhere, and just
Yeah. Yeah.
keeping like a consistent pace, hitting the brakes, being very smooth about
Yes.
like where I'm gonna go here, and
Yeah.
collecting
Definitely.
those positions. Also, like it's also a skill, like it's just not, as you
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
like the race is much more than just raw pace, and
Yes.
I've been trying to develop more that racecraft during the races. One of the things that I
Yeah.
started using more, and this like was more feedback from the chat, and I've been trying to play more of that, is the brake bias.
Yes.
So for example, here today I was going around this track, and I was like,
Yes.
the car's not turning, so let me bring the brake
Yeah.
more
Right. Okay.
to the rear and
Yes.
see like if I can have more oversteer,
Yes.
and start helping. But then like I was
Yes.
oversteering, then I brought back a little
Yes.
bit,
Yes.
and then like the car
Yes.
felt better. But like, things like that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. And look, I think they're all little things that you kind of, you do typically just learn in the moment. You learn from doing the races, you learn from having the experience. And it was the same even for me, last week at Le Mans in the GT3s, for example. I mean, I sat there and already had done basically 9 cars of obviously track guides for setups, obviously the week prior. And, obviously naturally had a pretty good idea of what I was doing. But it actually took me doing, a good 5 or 6 races to actually get my head around how the kind of pace was working in qualifying and what you needed to do in terms of warming up tires and the little things like that. That kind of made such a big difference in that sort of sense, to get those extra like 5 or 6 tenths out of the car that you kind of needed to be right at the front. Otherwise you were qualifying P9, 10, 11 almost in a way. So even on my level it is very kind of I still need to go through those processes sometimes. And I think, yeah, when you do look at all these guys that are racing, I think it's just about, a lot of the people that do race, throughout the weeks, they're doing, good 20, 25, nearly 30 races sometimes. Whereas, like yourself and myself, we're maybe only doing 4 or 5 races, maybe 7 or 8 races, for example, if even really that. So, it's always hard to, compare experience at a circuit in a week, almost in a way. There's just people that, have been running it since, you know, the moment that it dropped on your Monday evening, and then they're there all the way until the following Monday evening doing the same thing, just grinding it out. So, you know, you never know who you're racing against, and guess just what knowledge other people have in that sort of sense. So it always makes it quite interesting. But yeah, no, look, I think it's good to see, because again, all these circuits are new for you, right? I mean, you know, they're new for you in a driving sense, but they're also new for you for a racing sense as well. So just learning, you know, how all these different circuits work, and again, in all honesty, learning these circuits is something that, you know, you just experience, to be honest with you. You experience how they drive, you experience how they race. There's no real like true answer to say, oh, okay, this is what you could do, that's what you could do. Every situation is different when you're in a racing sort of area. So I think yeah, no, it's just about developing that. And again, it is going well, but like, you know, we have our good days and we have our shit days. You know, we all have them. I mean, I have them at the best of times as well. You know, I always have my minus 150 days as well, but I think the biggest thing is just, okay, actually taking away, well, what could I have done differently? You know, that's what you always need to take the positivity away from it, and really try to, yeah, learn from it in that manner there, and that can always really kind of, yeah, help you out in that sort of sense, I suppose. But yeah, no, look, I think honestly, Alan, like this week in terms of, I guess, comparison to one another, really, really good nonetheless. I think your understanding is quite decent, and there's some spots like T1, for example, which, yeah, in this car I did find a little bit tough to always get right, but you typically got it really, really well in terms of the way that you were doing it. But I guess it just shows that there is a couple of ways of going about a corner like that. But I suppose, yeah, you can really see the big area of effect is realistically 4 and 6, but then it's also the exit out of 11 and 12. And how prompt we are getting back onto the throttle in comparison to one another is actually then affecting the straight line speed that you have all the way down the back straight, which, as crazy as it seems, it's just, you know, something really small that makes it such a big difference in that case. But to be honest with you, overall, it's all very, very close. But I think the biggest thing that you will see today is there's a couple of little just sort of, not habits, but just a little of the kind of old things that maybe we used to talk about, like you can kind of see pretty much right at the moment, like right here. You know, you can see there's that little bit of coasting, rolling phase almost in a sense, and obviously we know very well that that's not something obviously that we want. But again, it probably has something to do with, you know, the way that you've jumped onto the brakes. Coming onto here, that's probably forced you or caused you to do it like that. A little bit of just, I guess, refinement with the braking pressure as we'll go through here today, just trying to get it, you know, a little bit lower. But that's the thing as well, like, you know, like I just said at the beginning of today, this car's hard on the brakes. In comparison to the Cayman, it doesn't stop as well, almost in a sense. And I always tend to notice that, because I just, going into turn 1, I had to active reset like 5 or 6 times just to try and get the damn thing to stop, because I'd go and hit the brakes where I thought it would stop, and it would just never stop, almost in a way, you know. Whereas if I went and tried and did the exact same thing in the Cayman, it would do what I needed it to, almost in a way. Now, whether that's just down to, again, having a front engine in the car, whether it's down to the weight of the car, whether it's down to, you know, just having that extra speed coming into the corners, you know, all these little factors that you just genuinely don't know. It could be one of those things. So do you feel that same sense? Do you just kind of feel like the car doesn't really want to slow down as well? Because I can see that you are typically braking a lot harder around here than typically what we're normally used to. Like, I mean, turn 1, you're braking nearly to the 80s, into here you're braking pretty much into nearly the high 60s, realistically, in a sense. So are you feeling like this car's a little bit iffy on the brakes for you as well?
Yeah, like the two things. That's one. The other one, I noticed that the car tolerates more like brake pressure than the other
Yeah.
cars that I've tried. So
Yes.
I can go like 80%, 85% on a straight line
Yep.
and not engage the ABS.
Yeah.
The problem is like
Yes,
once I
correct.
start
Yeah.
turning the car, if I'm still
Yeah.
like heavy on the brakes, then like the ABS is gonna
Yeah.
hit.
Correct. Yeah.
But it's just we discussed maybe like a week or two ago about kind of style, and I've been realizing that I don't know if it's my gear or if it's me, but I think I feel more comfortable braking later and harder, and really looking for that limit of the ABS. It's kind of, it gives me how can I say, it gives me like a good threshold, you know, it gives me a good idea of like where it should be, the max I could do. So it's kind of a reference. I don't know if it's a good or bad habit, but gives me that reference. So I've been like braking harder and later, and trying to go around the corner as fast as possible. but some corners they don't fit it. Like some corners, like the T2, 3. I tried a few
Yeah.
different things, and braking
Uh-huh.
harder there, you're gonna spin and crash. Like it's impossible. So
Yes.
that's the kind
Yeah.
of corner.
Yeah.
Just like feather the brake, just slow down a bit, create some rotation in the car, and then try to get in
Yes.
the gas. But
Yes.
in general, I've been feeling like this, finding the threshold of the ABS and getting like 2-3% below that. It's kind of
Yeah.
where I'm feeling comfortable.
Yep. No, that's good. That's good. And yeah, you are right. Like we all have our own individual styles, but I think as well all these cars, I suppose in a way, all have their own individual way of going about it. Now, you can obviously see that we kind of can get to similar answers almost in very different ways almost in a case. I mean, you look at T1 there and you see how I'm going about it in comparison to yourself. I mean, you can see how much earlier I'm jumping on the brakes in comparison to you. And then obviously naturally I'm trailing off a lot later than you are as well. Now, yeah, naturally you're getting a really big benefit there, which is again just great because it shows that you're maximizing your limit of the corner almost in a way, which is fantastic. But then like you also then mentioned, it's kind of the case of okay, it's something that works for there, but does it work everywhere else almost in a way, and I think
Exactly. Yeah.
that's always the big thing to keep the idea of, because you can come and see into a corner like 4 and 6, right, where you peak pressure to 63, I'm peak pressuring to 46, and you can see that naturally because of that you slowed the car down too much, and then that caused you to get on the throttle too aggressively, which then just caused that kind of limbo domino effect that you get all the way through the sort of combination of corners where you kind of like you're too slow at the apex, you pick up the throttle very aggressively, then you have to lift off, then you wash off more speed, then you have to pick it up. It just makes the timing all kind of be out of shape. And we know those moments like that where you kind of have to really aggressively pick up the throttle, they're usually bad news in corners like these because of just naturally, you generating probably more steering rotation or steering angle required because you're picking up the throttle a lot more aggressively, right? So I think the biggest thing is there is just like, yeah, I'm definitely with you on all cylinders in that sort of sense with obviously doing the harder braking without a doubt, because you can definitely put your foot through the floor a little bit more, and that's something that naturally you'll find from cars to cars or setups to setups as well. I mean, I've never actually really looked at the setup that they've got here in the fixed with this car. I mean, I'm not sure if they run maybe a different master cylinder or maybe different friction pads on the brakes or something like that. Because, yeah, obviously, naturally, you know that if you try and brake to 80% in the Cayman, it typically doesn't exactly go very well in terms of the ABS. So you definitely feel like every car has their own unique quality to them, and it's just about figuring that out. But yeah, I mean, look, that's something just to refine, and that's just something to kind of always figure out. And again, that's where it really comes down to it all with that efficiency of everything that we talk about as well. I mean, at the end of the day, the more understanding you can be with what you're doing and how you independently get to an answer is obviously fantastic. But then where to say, okay, well, there's some time available there, there's probably some time available there. How do I kind of determine, well, what is the difference in terms of like, okay, he's 2 tenths faster here, I'm 2 tenths slower here, or I'm 2 tenths faster there, and he's 2 tenths slower here. What's the difference between those little things and that capacity there? So yeah, it's always quite an interesting thing to look at. But I guess it's good to see that we're trialing and erroring different things between one another, because it just shows that you're finding your feet in your own sort of sense. But look, T1, I mean, nonetheless, like you said, you just explored the limit here. I mean, you went way deeper. Obviously, you went way harder. Again, the line that we had between one another was maybe slightly different to each other, but again, it got you the result that you were looking for at the end of the day. Like I said, the only real comment that I would make otherwise is you can obviously see that there's that little bit of coasting down the bottom, and that's the only thing that this type of style of braking really hard, which then obviously causes a really prompt release, can sometimes have, is that you sometimes miss that last little bit of trail because you're just coming away from the pedals so quickly because you have braked really hard and really late, that again just that transition phase feels like it happens a lot faster almost in a sense. So do you find that's just a natural response from probably braking very hard, that you kind of missed that last little bit, or is again that just something maybe you missed or didn't mean to do, was just probably out of despite that maybe you just slightly missed that last little bit of a trail and then had that little rolling phase there, I suppose?
Yeah, like this was very brief. What I think is happening here, like this is this car like on this corner snaps a lot the rear, right? So I'm hugging the inside curb. If you look how I'm doing it, I'm really
Yeah,
hugging the
yeah,
inside curb.
yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
like I'm brake, brake, brake. I make sure I hug that curb, and then I have a specific point, and you see like I'm going to first gear. I don't think you're going to first gear there, and in that very specific points where I go on the gas, and it might be like in this situation was a few meters like from where I finished trailing the brake, to avoid also like over
Yeah.
slowing down the car, but it was more
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
not screw up the exit than going
Yeah.
too early on on the gas, and then because you know how there is kind of if you stay on the inside, you kind of go on the gas and the track holds like there's a camber there. But if you're on the middle of the track, there is no camber, so you start like slipping away from the track. So I think I was trying to find that line, and that was
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we probably remember, well, you probably tried it potentially in the Cayman, or I guess we remember from when we did the M2. I think the biggest thing with this kind of corner was like you would always try to find that later apex, almost in a way. You know, you're always trying to kind of get the nose to cut back in at this point, probably at the like the third part of the corner, almost in a way, and then you'll kind of drive off tight. But just with the way that this car kind of felt, it didn't really feel like I was able to achieve that, to be honest with you. Just by braking early and braking softer still, it didn't really I couldn't really get the nose in, almost in a way. So it kind of felt like I was a lot of the time kind of crossing past the apex in this car, almost in a way, and letting the car just float out more to the center of the circuit on the exit. But yeah, I think, to be honest with you, there's a lot of different ways to go about taking this corner, but I feel like probably in the way that you're driving it, you probably open up your door a little bit more to try a few different sort of things and a few different approaches, whereas my one, it probably can be very easy to run into mistakes here. That's the only problem with this kind of way of maybe braking not as hard. That I kind of just close my limitations to what I can, and obviously what I can't do as well. So because I like I said, I typically did find there was like five times where I literally just bolted off at turn one or completely missed the apex just because I broke that little bit later, tried to brake to the normal pressure, and it just went straight. Typically, in a sense, So it was quite an interesting combo this turn one in this car. Whereas, like I said, the Cayman probably would feel like a bit of ease of use through this
Mm-hmm.
corner almost in a way. So it's quite interesting just to see the mixes. But yeah, again, it's just like you said, that Cayman can be really really good through the corners. But then it's kind of like with these circuits, well, where do you really make all your passing maneuvers? I mean, you generally generate them all through the straights, I
Yeah.
guess. If you get a good run onto a straight and you get a good, not even get a good run, but just get a good slipstream almost in a way and have good power in the car, you can typically generate something. But if you're in the Cayman, you kind of feel like, oh yeah, fantastic, I get a good run out of the corner, but the thing just doesn't really have any grunt. So it's always a hard mix, I suppose, between the car choices. But yeah, like I said, the Cayman would probably feel like a bit of a easier car to drive through here. So yeah, no, look, at the end of the day, I think, like I said, good to see that you're trying different stuff out. Good to see that you're just exploring where that threshold is, because at the end of the day, if you can brake harder, you can brake harder. But I think for me, you can kind of see that, my style that I'm obviously always doing, I keep it very consistent. I'm always doing the same thing all the time. If I jump from car to car to car to car, I try to keep it very consistent. But you can see that there's situations where it maybe does work very well, but then there's also situations where it maybe doesn't work very well. And it's just about understanding, well, what would I prefer? Like we talked about a bit last week, would I prefer doing something that's more consistent, right, but it's slightly slower? Or would I prefer to do something that maybe, if I do something slightly wrong, or if I maybe, like you said, you maybe brake a bit too late, you turn in a little bit too early, you start the ABS, it could go wrong very quickly, right? So it's just about saying, like, what do you feel most comfortable with achieving? And again, that all links back to understanding your style and how you enjoy to approach it. Because we can see we are getting very close to each other week on week on week, and that's obviously fantastic. But it's just about saying, well, how do we make sure that we get that answer out of everything consistently, and that's the biggest thing. So yeah, no, look, any questions with there, and anything to add, or does that kind of make
No,
sense
no,
for you there?
it makes sense.
Yep, that's good. Okay, perfect. So like you said, 2 and 3. So I think the interesting one with this car, if I remember, well, I guess the previous car we looked at here, which was obviously the M2 for this corner. I think if I do remember correctly, the way that we were going about this corner in that car was we kind of were doing that bit of a squeeze, almost in a way like you are doing here. I mean, yeah, it's been a while now, so obviously I don't remember, but I do remember in some sense that we were squeezing into the brake rather than kind of peaking and releasing. Now, naturally, I think just in that car, I think just because the way that the car reacted, the way that the platform kind of was in that thing, I think it kind of prompted us to do that so we could actually get the thing to rotate at the latter part of the corner almost in a sense. But I think, to be honest with you, you can probably, like we said before, you know, you have your own style. You probably can get away with doing that in this car as well if you really wanted to. But you can kind of see that I just typically have a bit more of a peak and a trail coming through here, to be honest with you. And we basically there or thereabouts get to the same answer. You can see that from you doing it in that way where you peak later. I mean, that's the whole idea of doing it, that kind of peak at the end, is you drop the minimum speed, right? That's what it's all about. You drop the minimum speed more so it rotates more. And you can obviously see that by that loss of minimum speed at the top there, but also then naturally you can get the full throttle a lot earlier than myself as well. But it's just kind of more so the sense of, okay, well, what do you probably feel like will work better for you on a consistent range? Would you feel like you'd prefer to peak and release almost in a way to feel like then you could pick up the throttle earlier but get the full throttle later? Or would you feel like you do it in your way where you kind of wash more speed off coming into the corner, you can pick up the throttle later but get the full throttle, you know, earlier almost in a way? So I guess for what you're feeling, what would you kind of prefer almost in a way? Would you do you like it in the way that you're doing it right now? Are you finding it's pretty consistent in the way you're doing it at the moment, or do you feel like you might want to give it a go in another direction and see? Because at the end of the day, it's only half a tenth, but at the end of the day, half a tenth is half a tenth, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, how do you feel there otherwise?
Yeah, so this was one that someone on the chat told me to try to do differently because I was coming in too narrow on the first one, on the T2. And I remember on the BMW, we would ignore that one, right? We just go wide and aim for the T3 and get a good like entry there. Yep. So I like as I was trying better laps, like other laps, I start like going more towards that. And I think I'm guessing here, but I think it's more like maybe I'm braking even earlier than we are, and less, and just like holding that steady to slow down the car, and then I can go on the gas as early as you can go probably. Because like then it's before you even hit the corner, as you're pointing to it, and use all the exit. I have not been super consistent yet, as like in the BMW we got to a point that we're super consistent in this corner. But I'm finding that line is probably taking this half a tenth off, because it gives me, maybe I'm losing some time like in the entry, to be honest. But I think like all the time here, at least from what I'm seeing, like all the time here is after I hit the gas, and I'm hitting the gas super late because I'm so narrow. And if I go earlier, I'm gonna go off track, right? So I'm actively long way of saying I'm actively exploring like your line, much more like closer to your line than this line.
Okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. I know it's always hard to kind of tell because VRS has its days where, you know, the line sometimes doesn't look exactly 1-to-1 to what it is. But yeah, do you feel like naturally you are going a lot shallower in that kind of sense? Like you are kind of going a lot more to the inside, probably in comparison to what I'm doing, because I know I am going out quite wide coming into there. So do you feel like you're probably sitting a little bit more mid-track, almost more to the inside, I suppose?
On this one, like on this lap, So just give me a second here, because I have the game here.
Okay.
Which one? I think is this one here. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, gotcha. Yep.
So we're coming out here, right? And then you see like how close I was getting to this.
Oh, okay.
And go on the brake.
Really...
And I remember like on the M2, and that's like what's happening here. Like I cannot go on the gas. I'm still on the brake. Because the car has to point more towards like here. And I go on the gas right here. And also I'm over slowing down the car. If you see how much I'm cutting in. So what I started doing, and it also has a lot to do with this corner here, because the car, too much. The car comes out like snapping. A little bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
You see like how much it's dancing here. So I'm trying to get the line, trying to find the line, and when I see myself, like I wish I was more like here. So I'm trying to go a little bit deeper now, like instead of turning in here, turning in more like here, and that's what we're probably doing, like going around this side here. But like when I do this, I'm hitting the brakes slightly earlier. Like I'm probably hitting the brakes like right here, so I can slow down the car. And when I get to this point here, the car is much more pointed to the exit.
Okay, yeah. No, look, I mean, to be honest with you, Alan, like, you can go about doing it in the exact same way if you really wanted to. All you really just got to make sure you do is just crank less steering into the second half of the corner, really. Because if you just put a little bit, because you don't really have a lot of angle as it is anyway, but if you kind of just reduce that steering rotation just a little bit as you come into the second half, the car will actually just open itself up a little bit wider and you'll open up that radius of the corner. But if you obviously naturally keep on steering, right, if you keep on turning, of course, naturally it's going to keep on turning, right? So then you obviously end up in the middle. So yeah, look, I think in that kind of sense, to be honest with you, man, I think the biggest thing that we got to maybe try and do is I think let's just try and maybe, like you said, you can maybe turn in a little bit later, or in all honesty, you can still turn in from where you are. It just makes sure that like when you get through that kind of first left, you open up the steering wheel and let it float out more to the right. And if you can allow it to do that, that should typically help you to get, I guess a little bit of a better answer in terms of what you're trying to do in that kind of sense and give you that result that you're looking for. So yeah, no, it's quite interesting, I think, in that manner. But yeah, no, look, it is a very small amount of time, but again, like you said, it's just about trying to find that consistent way of going about doing it. Because if you can find that consistency, it's going to make your life a lot easier in terms of that corner as it was in the BM. So yeah, look, try it in both ways. Try and sort of, yeah, do more of a wider entry, maybe a peak and release, see if that helps you out. Try doing the same thing. Try it with your kind of, you squeeze and you hold at the end almost in a way and see if that works out. But yeah, it's a very small amount of time, so it's not really too big of an issue, really, in a sense. It's just trying to find something that fits and works for you, probably more consistently, I suppose, more than anything. So yeah, no, look, something to keep in mind. But yeah, other than that, all really good. 4 and 6. So, like we said, this is where I guess the majority of the time is falling away for yourself. But again, I don't think it's anything that you're doing wrong almost in an instance. I think it's just as we talked about earlier with the whole idea of breaking that little bit deeper and harder. I think you've just obviously naturally carried that approach into here as well. And what has worked for you at somewhere like turn one, for example, hasn't exactly worked out for you coming into 4 and 6. And I guess that's where it always starts to, you got to be very careful with kind of this, because at the end of the day, if we do think about it realistically from that big level, okay, yeah, we're not hitting the ABS, at this level. But in a way, it kind of just brings back to what we started with a very, very long time ago, in the sense of, the harder that we brake in a lot of cases, the slower that we go. We always have learnt with this platform that typically the earlier on the brakes you can go and the softer on the brakes you can go, in majority of capacities, it's always going to be faster, right? Obviously, like I said, turn one, was a great corner for you, really, really good, and you maximised it. But that's the only spot, right, out of the whole track that it actually worked better. Everywhere else, realistically, it worked worse, pretty much in a sense, right? So I think the biggest thing in a way is just like, okay, yeah, it works, but we're just going to make sure that we don't run away from the thing that we know so well to be able to do. Because at the end of the day here, what has happened is we break that little bit later, we break that little bit harder, right? You obviously wash that minimum speed off down at the apex. You pick up the throttle, obviously, very aggressively to regain back that speed that you've lost right here, right? But then because of that, it means you have to lift a lot more aggressively to obviously combat that more speed that you kind of had there. And then naturally you pick up the throttle more aggressively. Because you pick up the throttle more aggressively means you're going slightly faster. Because you're going slightly faster, you've got to lift off more. Because you lift off more, you lose all the speed down there, and it like carries all the way until you get to the top of the hill there, which you lose basically nearly 4/10 of a second, basically, just because of that little sequence there, right? So that there is pretty much pretty much 3/4 of your lap time gone, basically, through that little section and that little straight, right? And that's basically where the difference is between you nearly being identical to me and then obviously being that 5 or 6 tenths away almost in the case. So I think it's just about, again, in terms of style, just remembering that, yeah, there are corners where definitely you can get away with breaking that little bit deeper. But always remember that the fastest way we work these cars is if you can typically brake as early as you can and as soft as you can, that's always going to be faster. Even though you can brake that little bit deeper and a little bit later, there's the ability to do so. It doesn't always mean it's going to be quick, and I think that's always the big thing to understand. There's the ability to do it, but I know that there's the ability to do it, but I don't do it because I know that, it's not going to work everywhere. So I just do the way that I know is typically going to work best. It might work better or worse in some spots, but you can see probably, yeah, 95% of the circuit, it's working typically better for me in a lot of these sort of situations by the finest of margins, but it's still working slightly better. So we're just going to kind of, yeah, try to depict where and probably when we're using it. To be honest with you, if I could give the biggest tip for that, the ideas where you're breaking up to the really, really hard pressures, I'd only try and maybe leave that for the very big, heavy braking zones, to be honest with you, right? So I'd leave them for like the big, long straights that you're kind of coming off from, big, long, sort of heavy braking zones. I'd probably leave the really heavy braking right up into that threshold for those big, heavy braking zones. Whenever I get to like any low speed or medium speed corners, go back to what we know best. Try and really keep that brake pressure quite low, and don't really try to do anything, over the hedge, almost in a way, in that kind of sense. Just try and keep it natural to what we've learned so well, because I think you've seen that, it does work really, really well in the past, and you can obviously see that naturally it hasn't worked very well in the way we've tried to maybe do it here. But again, that's something that we tried to develop and get away from, almost in a sense, and we don't really want to bring that back in. So maybe just try and, with the mindset of how you're doing it, maybe just try and sort of say, okay, well, I'll leave my really late and really heavy braking for the deep and heavy braking corners, right? I'll give it for the corners where I actually kind of need it. Whereas all the kind of more medium speed and low speed corners, let me just do what I know best, braking around 30 or 40%, all those kind of pressures like that. Because again, realistically, if we think about it, your braking here was heavier than my braking at turn one, pretty much in the sense, right? So it's kind of a case of, yeah, T1 for me was the massive braking zone, whereas this is just a little small braking zone, in a sense, and we're braking probably a little bit harder, right? So yeah, does that kind of make sense? Almost in a way, yeah, I guess that approach that maybe we should try and emulate, I guess, in a sense.
It does. Like, yeah, and as you're speaking, of course, like things make a lot of sense, and I'm watching here what I did, and I'm trying to root cause, right? Why I was reacting the way I was reacting. And what I'm realizing here, I did a few adjustments in my brake bias, and on this lap, I had a lot of oversteer. So I was just looking what happened here. As I came out of the previous corner, I went all the way on the green part, right?
Yes.
But I'm fighting with the steering wheel. So as soon as I get the car straight, I go on the brakes, but that's too late. So I have to go harder. And because I go harder on the brakes, I'm inducing more oversteer on the next corner. So as I clip the next corner, I'm just like fighting with the car to make sure like it's not pointing elsewhere. And that's why you select the behavior on the throttle as it is. It's most like trying to correct the car, make sure it's not spinning. But then like to your point, and I'm looking here again, there's like a massive oversteer as I turn in, and then I'm fighting back the car, and then as I'm trying to point the car into, which turn is this? Like maybe 5?
Yeah, so it's turn 4, 5, 6, so it's the left, right, left,
So like it's the first is the left, then there's a right, and then the second right. I'm again like fighting with the car, and as I exit there, the car is still like slipping to the side, so I'm fighting with the steering wheel. I'm looking here, my wheel is like to the left, the car is going to the right. So I think what you said, the way I'm hearing it, like this behavior here is not the right one for here. And in my case, was more reactive. So the adjustment that I did on the brake bias, like bringing it a little bit more like forward and understeer in relation to this lap, I think that helped because after I changed it, I was going for a few fast laps, right? And at some point I was being like 0.24 faster in the sector. So I don't like these two corners, but in the sector I could take like 0.24, and that means like the car was actually racing or going around the line instead of like sleeping and dancing so much.
Right. Yeah. Okay. For sure. And yeah, I think, look, that is just a bit of a car quality thing as well to get used to too. I mean, we do know that this thing does dance around a lot more. The Cayman is very balanced, to be honest with you. When you think about the platform, it is very stabilized. So to be honest with you, it is definitely something to work with, and it is good to hear that you are working with the brake bias, for example, because it is very important. But yeah, I think again, it's just more so this heavier braking. I guess as we know so well, the only big issue with it can be is depending on the way that you approach it, like you said, it can start to become very reactive, and that's not what we want, because we know that we generate that time so well, and like I said at the beginning of today, efficiently, out of being structured with our driving. So when you kind of have to start making sudden reactions, or this starts to happen or that starts to happen because again you're maybe just pushing the car right just too close or even over the limit at times, you're just working things too hard, that's where then you're overstepping the mark, and you gotta say, okay, well, I gotta bring things back a little bit. So yeah, like it's something interesting to think about, but again, it's just again us working through all these different cars and seeing all these different qualities from them that are kind of opening up all these different, I guess, approaches or ideas or ways of going about them that, we probably really haven't been used to. Because again, with the BMW, we got used to doing it in one way and you're doing it very well. Initially with the Cayman, we got used to doing it that way and you got used to doing it very well, right? BMW, was not too bad. But then this one, you can see that it's opening up a lot of different kind of philosophies for you and just sort of trying different things. But again, it's about sort of trying to see, okay, well, what's the best way and probably what's the most efficient way to go about doing them. So yeah, no, look, get where you're coming from there. But yeah, I think as you can kind of see, if we can maybe try and be a little bit more, a little bit more kind of soft with the pedal and just maybe bring things back a little bit more. Hopefully it should just get the corner balanced a little bit more. But yeah, it does sound like you are finding a pretty decent way to get the car to settle, and a pretty easy way to get the car to do what you kind of need to do after the fact. Almost here you were gaining 2.5 tenths realistically. So yeah, taking the time coming back for you there, but it's just about understanding, well, how are we getting to that answer and why do we need to get to that answer. So it's just about understanding that in that capacity, and that'll really help you out in that sense. So yeah, look, other than that, man, that's all good. But yeah, a really important sector to try and really get right, because there's a big chunk of time for you to obviously gain through there, which realistically is where the lap time is going away from you, bar the back straight, almost in that sense. So yeah, look, coming away from there, obviously all the way up the straight here, just going to be lingering time. Turn 10, so well, I mean, obviously I would consider it 9 and 10, but yeah, this sort of right to left section. I found myself dabbing the brakes through there, but good to see that you felt it was good enough to obviously just lift through there. So did that feel okay for you? You could just lift through that right little kink and you didn't need to use the brakes? It was just lifting, felt fine?
Yeah, yeah, and that's the.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember which one is this.
So it's that right kink just before you go through the left, pretty much.
Oh, okay,
So
okay,
it's
okay.
that, yeah, as you get to the top of the hill. Yeah.
It's like the. No, I think.
Yeah, so it's that one just at the tippy top of the hill before you start to come down, before you come down the hill and you go into the double right. So you'll come out of that 4-5 section, so you go left, you go right, down the straight through the snake section, so through the left, through the right, then you'll come up through that right little kink at the top of the hill before you jump on the brakes, go through that really fast left-hander, and then you crest down the hill.
Okay.
For the big double right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing here. Yeah, this one, what I learned about it is that you can really cut off a lot of the corners that come before, and if you can cut like the one coming into it, if you can cut it well, it's just like a lift, and you can kind of like almost hug the inside curb there, like the wide curb, and that's gonna help position for the next one, and then you go on the brakes and left side.
Yeah, no, for sure. So no, that's good. Because I think you just got to try. Carry as much speed through that right, but again, make sure that you're in the right position before you hit the brakes going into the left. So yeah, I felt like for me, from the laps that I did, I just dabbed the brakes to be safe. But again, good to see that you've experimented with it, just lifting off, which again just shows that you're understanding the feeling of the car, the limitation of the car, the threshold of the car. So that's really good, right? So no, well done there. Obviously through the left-hander, so you can naturally see that the style that we've been talking about here today followed through to here. So you can see naturally you broke later and you broke harder. Again, you can see that it did obviously naturally wash away the minimum speed all the way through. So you can see when we did this, right, you can see, look at the minimum speed there, it's slower all the way out, which naturally would have been costing you all the way down to 11 and 12. So the thing is that if I went about doing it the right hander in the same way as yourself, where I just lifted almost in a way, well, then it would have been a case of, okay, it's a thing of what ifs almost in a way. Would have it been, even faster for me maybe if I just lifted and did the same thing, or would it maybe just been the way that because you didn't brake, sorry, through the right-hander, did you actually have to brake a little bit deeper and a little bit later, right? Almost in that case. It probably wouldn't have been the case if you would have been braking deeper, to be honest with you. Probably, you know, again, you probably could have been braking earlier. So yeah, like I said, it would have been interesting to see how I would have got, or what answer I would have got from the corner if I just lifted almost in a way. But that's what you've always got to be cautious about, is that like, okay, you know, there's a little bit of a difference in that sense. I still am slightly faster. Would it have been a case that I might have been even faster, or would it have been a case of you actually might have gone faster if I didn't hit the brakes? Because again, the way that obviously the car would have been slowing down for me versus you would have been maybe a little bit different. But I probably can imagine that naturally, just because you've broken later, and then obviously naturally you have to brake harder because you've broken later, that probably wouldn't be kind of helping that minimum speed issue. Whereas still, if I lifted it and broke at the same point, broke to the same pressure, I'd probably maybe even be carrying a higher minimum speed, almost in a way, potentially in a way, you know. So yeah, there's a lot of questions, I guess, with a corner like this of what couldn't be good. But at the end of the day, I think it's not really a corner where anything's going to happen, I suppose. I mean, there's no passing opportunities going to be generated through this corner here. So it's just about finding a consistent way of doing it in terms of the lap time. So again, like we just discussed, try and maybe just bring things back a little bit on the brakes, bring things down ever so slightly, and see if maybe you can feel that little bit of benefit from it. But yeah, see how that feels for you anyway, and that should be that should maybe give you a little bit of time in your pocket, hopefully there. Yeah, any questions with that?
No,
Otherwise, that all okay?
no. I was just looking here. Like, there's a crest, and on Tuesday, kind of like where I was braking with the Porsche, I was like just after the crest, and that's what I was replicating here. But I could have went on the brakes like much earlier. The car was stable enough to go on the brakes, so I can do that.
Yeah, no, totally. So yeah, there's probably a little bit of sort of room to play around with in that kind of manner there. So yeah, there's something to think about nonetheless. Now, 11 and 12. So even though this corner is the same, it's directly what's affected that S13 being nearly 2/10 slower, right? And the only reason why is because of the way that you've got it on the throttle in comparison to myself, right? Now, the only reason why that is the case is because there's this gap here, really is in the case, right? So it's this gap here that's directly causing this gap almost here, really is in a way, right? So where you actually gain the lap time coming out of this corner is actually how quickly you can get on the power. It's not how quickly you can get to 100%, it's how quickly you can get on the power. Because whenever you get on that throttle coming out of here, that's what directly starts your actual your momentum phase coming up down that straight, almost in a sense, and that's what's actually starting the momentum phase going forward. So okay, yeah, you can be definitely a lot more efficient on getting from 0 to 100 a lot quicker, but it's always going to be beaten by the person that always is going to get on that throttle just that little bit earlier. And once again, we always know that in these front engine cars, we rotate the car on the throttle, really is in the case, right? That's how we turn these cars almost in a way with the front motor. So the earlier that you can pick up the throttle, the more that it's actually going to turn. The later that you actually pick up the throttle, the less that it's probably going to turn in a way, right? And you can kind of see that in the second part of the corner where we are rotating, look at the line. We're basically the same, but where I go to pick up the throttle, look how my car turns, yours doesn't. Reason in a sense, right? It's because I'm picking up the throttle here, generating the turn. You're trailing, you're not generating the turn, right? The Cayman would generate the turn in that way. The Ford doesn't generate the turn in that way, right? So your idea is we're trying to position the car, and that's, I guess, the way you can look at it for the rest of this sort of circuit as well in what we've discussed here today. But we're trying to position the car well enough and in the right spot that we can pick up the throttle very early to get the car to actually rotate, right? And that's the biggest reason why I'm always typically maybe braking a little bit early in this car as well, is because, again, I'm timing it to get it to where I need it to be so I can pick up the throttle a little bit early and then a little bit more aggressively, and then typically will just then allow me to get out of the corner better and rotate the car better, whereas maybe yourself, we're just maybe trying to, I guess, emulate it still the same as what we were doing in the Cayman, almost in a sense. Because again, that's your kind of other example of this track, and the other sort of comparison that you have for what you were feeling around here. And maybe this worked in the Cayman very well, but maybe it's not working very well in this car, almost in a sense, right? So it's just about remembering that we are turning this car more with the throttle. So that like first 10, 20, 30% of the throttle is your most important part of the on throttle phase, rather than just trying to get back to full throttle, because then you can then see that, yeah, I just have that benefit literally all the way down the straight in comparison to yourself, and you just basically lose again between here, 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 and here. That's your that, pretty much, in a sense, right? That's it. Otherwise, we're exactly the same, pretty much, in a sense, right? So it's a very small difference between one another, but very, very, I guess, just minor little philosophies of how we're going about doing it to get the answer, I suppose, in a way. So does that make sense to you there?
Yeah, yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah, yeah,
And what you like, you just hit the nail on the head, because the Porsche, and we've driven enough the Porsche to a point that I kind of, if I go too early on the gas, I'm gonna understeer, right? And this car is kind of the opposite. If I go too late on the gas, I'm gonna understeer. So I have
yes, correct, yep,
I have to flip the switch and make sure that I'm trying things with these cars, because like
yeah,
that's the point, right? Of the open
yeah,
sessions, just try
yes,
new things. And what you said
yeah,
like was my struggle. I was trying to carry as much speed around the corner as possible,
yeah,
but and I was trying to go early on the gas, but I was kind of afraid of doing it. Now next time I go
yeah,
around it, I'm gonna try to just
yeah.
go as early as possible and see if I can stay on the track.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, exactly. And again, look, that honestly is what typically generates that kind of oversteer feeling, almost, in a way, as well. But again, that's just what we're dealing with in this Ford. It just is a little bit more snappy on the rear. The platform isn't as stabilized, so it does make it quite hard in that sort of manner there. But again, that's what you need to do to actually get this thing to turn. Almost, in a way, and that's how we develop it. So yeah, look, it's just one of those things that I think we just gotta, from a driving standpoint, just try to just try to kind of maximize that, and really get that answer out of it in that sort of capacity there. So yeah, look, something to think about, something to consider. But yeah, just one of those little things that we've got to kind of think about and keep in mind. So yeah, look, other than that, something really, really small, but I think something super duper beneficial for your driving. And I guess just more so for your overall lap time in this part of the circuit as well, because a very, very, very easy bit of lap time to gain, but also a very, very easy bit of lap time, as you can clearly see, to lose. I think just mainly because of a minor little philosophy adjustment that we just need to have to obviously get that answer from what we're from what we're trying to do as well. So yeah, just something to think about there. But yeah, look, otherwise, the last couple corners, 14 and 15, you were faster here again. You just maximized the corner a little bit better. Again, this was like a turn one. Remember how we said going later and harder in a very heavy braking zone probably works very well, as it did here, right? You went very late, you went a little bit harder, it worked much better for you, right? That's obviously fantastic. But it's more so than the case if you look, at maybe the last corner, I suppose, in a sense. And again, you maybe picked up the brake very hard initially, almost, in a sense, rather than kind of squeezing into the pedal a little bit more. And naturally, it just kind of washed away a little bit more speed for you. And then naturally, you had a bit of a slower exit because of it, almost in that sort of sense there. So I think the BM was very similar to this. But I think, again, it was kind of more so the same as what I was doing, where you would pick it up quite early. So you would pick it up as you would just initially turn into the left-hander of the final corner. And then you would kind of squeeze into it at the end, where you've kind of just broken and picked it up straight away. And then you've had a little bit of a squeeze at the last part of it before then trailing down and getting on the throttle again. So the idea is similar, just the application of how we're going about it is slightly different. And actually that's just going to be what's losing your time. So I'd say that for you there is probably just a stability thing, just feeling like the car isn't really stable, so you kind of maybe pick up the brake a little bit more initially there, but just feel like you can kind of squeeze into the pedal a little bit more into this one, rather than having to kind of have this really long holding phase, almost, in a sense, just kind of develop your way up the pedal. And typically that'll allow you to get that answer, I think, a little bit better, almost in that manner there. So look, I think a lot of little philosophy things here today. I think a lot of just kind of areas that obviously we've discussed almost in a way that we have talked about. But I think, again, it's just one of those things that you try to keep exploring, you try to keep learning what works best for you, and learning what makes the car, I guess, and the car with your quality of driving work in the best way. But I think when you think about it in that manner, you've just got to kind of say to yourself, okay, well, remember where we've come from, remember what we started at, and don't ever walk away from that. I think that's the biggest thing, because we know that if you brake later and harder in this car, it just does not work in a lot of situations, right? It does work in some, right? But it doesn't work in all, as you can kind of see here today. So it is a different style. It's definitely something that only works very sensitively depending on the car, but we're just going to make sure that it can work in certain spots, as you've seen, but just make it work in the heavy braking zones. Don't make it work in all the medium and low speed stuff, because when you go into the medium and low speed and try to do the same thing, it just starts to get to that issue where we're probably back to, you know, square one almost, and again, where we're braking too late, too hard, washing off too much minimum speed, and then naturally you're losing 3/10 every single time, you know? So can you see that approach? And I guess just, yeah, think about that refinement now, and like how you can add that to your style, but just make it very particular in terms of what you're looking for, I guess, in a way.
100%, 100%. And I think like what I really need also is more practice time. Just come here,
Yeah.
sit and just try new things and try it for longer.
Yeah.
That's kind of like, that's why we see so many repeated issues week over week. Is, in my opinion, right? I'm not getting like enough sit time here, just to practice the things that we've been discussing.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, at the end of the day, they're there, you know, like the ideas are there, and you have them sitting in your mind. I think it's just more so, again, the hard thing is that when you are adjusting cars every single week or every second week, realistically, it's going to change the way that you think, you know, it's going to change the way that you feel. You know, all the things are going to be different, things are slightly going to be different approaches and all the stuff like that. So at the end of the day, you know, it's more so the case if we were driving just the same consistent car, as we know, right, we know that we get very consistent with it, right? Again, we are quite consistent with what we're doing here as well, but you can just see that where there is that like 0.6% of difference between us is just because of two little sections that maybe you tried something different and it didn't really work, but then you were faster in some sections because you tried something different and it did work, you know? So it's just about sort of saying to yourself, okay, well, how do I make sure that, you know, in every situation, I'm getting the best answer from the car and obviously getting the best answer from the track. And that's really the big thing that you got to try to walk away with in a lot of those situations. So yeah, look, Alan, look, very impressed, man. And again, like I said, didn't have a lot of time to kind of, you know, put into it this week. Life is getting busy. So, you know, the more efficiently your kind of practice time is and the more efficiently you can get your answers, obviously is great to see as well, because naturally it just shows that your understanding is really, really good. But yeah, a few, I think, just big takeaways here today, more so from a structure point of view, and I guess just reminding yourself of that difference between a car that maybe is front engine and obviously naturally a car that is rear engine as well. So yeah, look, bro, keep that all in mind. Yeah, obviously we'll touch base next week and see what we're looking at. But yeah, look, like I said, if the moment ever happens in the next coming weeks, because I know it's all quite close, please do let me know, and we can obviously work around that, of course, and we'll re-pick up whenever obviously time suits well. But we're coming to the end of the season now anyway, so it's maybe not a bad time anyway.
Yeah.
It happens at the right time nonetheless.
She's almost here. Like we had two situations this week that we thought like it might be it, but it wasn't. So like we're at a time that. But I'll text you for sure, and I appreciate you being flexible.
No, of course, man. I know it's always a busy time. It's always a big moment in life, a unique one. So yeah, no, like I said, you just let me know whenever it comes about. You just let me know, and we'll work around it nonetheless. So yeah, no, look, all good, Alan. So look, go away, give that a try, see how you get on. And yeah, you know, any questions, you let me know, and obviously we'll touch base next week, and we'll see what we're looking at in that sense there.
Perfect, man. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, bro. Have a good week, okay? You take it easy.
Thank you too.
Thanks, Alan. Good night, bro. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, so that was it. I'm gonna finish this stream here because tomorrow I have to wake up super early to pick up my parents from the airport. Very good discussion. I think it makes a lot of sense, which is usually good. And yeah, we'll see you guys probably tomorrow. Parents are gonna be here, so I don't know how that's gonna go, but I'll probably see you guys tomorrow. Okay.